Hi, hi everyone. My name is Sarah. Welcome to the Halloween cookie class. I'm really excited to have you guys joining me today. And like Lindsay said, definitely put your comments in the chat and she'll reiterate them to me. So we can get started now. We can go over to the overhead camera and I'll show you guys what we're making. So we have 3 witch cookies. We have a witch hat, a witch, and then a cauldron. And here, some of the supplies are cornstarch. This is going to help us work with the fondant. And when it gets sticky, it's going to help it not stick to the surface or your hands if your hands start to get a little warm. We have also a silicone mat. This is going to help the sticking too. If you don't have one of these, that's okay too. Just use cornstarch or powdered sugar. I have a small rolling pin. I have water and a food safe paintbrush. This is going to help adhere the pieces of fondant to the cookie and to each other. I also have towels that are wet and dry. This is going to help in between working with colors, and if the fondant starts to stick to my hand, because my hands do run a little warm, I'll definitely be wiping them and my work surface down a lot during this process. If you are next to a sink with water and soap, that's a lot better. So definitely do that. I have 3 sugar cookies here. These are actually store-bought sugar cookies. If you have homemade, that's great too. Whatever works best. We can also do these designs on brownies, Rice Krispie treats, really anything. It's the sky's the limit with fondant. And then for the fondant, we have black, white, orange, bright green, and purple. I have a circle cutter that's about 3 inches. If your cookie is smaller than 3 inches, then you'll want to size down. You want to go with what the size cookie you're using or whatever surface you're using. So this pretty much matches up with the size of my cookie. I also have scissors. This is going to help open up the packages, and a knife for cutting the small pieces. And then we also have Ziploc bags. This is very important because we are working with the 4.4 ounce packs and these aren't resealable. So once we have these open, you want to wrap the fondant back into this bag and close it airtight. And then maybe even put it into a Tupperware as well, because that's going to help the fondant stay nice and soft. Once fondant is exposed to air, it automatically starts to dry up. So it's very, very important to wrap your fondant up while you're not working with it. So first, let's start with the cauldron. So for the cauldron, we'll need a cookie, we'll need your circle cutter, we'll need black fondant and bright green fondant. So I'll put everything else to the side for now. I'll need my scissors. Okay, so I'm going to leave this here so everyone has the view of what it looks like. So first, we're going to start with the black fondant. And I'm just going to use my scissors to open it. And I'm just going to take off about 1/4 of the stick of fondant. And then, so with fondant, it's going to be soft to start with, but not soft enough to be pliable. So what we're going to do is we're going to knead it, and that's going to activate the gums to make it softer. But what I'm doing now is I'm putting my extra fondant away in this bag. And I'm going to make sure all the air is out. So I'm going to press it down and close this up. Like I said before, this is very important because you want your fondant to stay soft. Okay. So to soften this up a little bit more, we're just going to begin to knead this. If you have a small amount of fondant, you can press in between your fingers. And before you know it, the fondant's going to be really pliable and soft. If you are working with a larger amount, you can put it on your surface. You can use the palm of your hand, press down and push, roll it, press down and push. And this is also going to knead your fondant. In this process, you'll probably want to dust your surface with some cornstarch or powdered sugar. When you do use powdered sugar, only use the tiniest amount. The more powdered sugar you use, that can dry the fondant out. So you just wanted to use it as a barrier between your surface or your hands and the fondant to help it from sticking to your hands and to the surface. My hands do run hot, so you'll often see me using cornstarch because the fondant will stick to me. So I'm just going to continue to knead this to make sure that it's pliable enough for me to roll it out. Mine's just about ready. So you can't really over knead fondant. The part that might get a little difficult if you're kneading it for too long is if you have to use too much cornstarch and if the fondant gets a little too warm for your hands. So now mine has a nice little stretch there. So I think mine's good to go. So what I'm going to do is we're going to roll it into a ball, and I'm just going to press it down a little bit just to help get any air bubbles out. And I'm going to dust my surface with a little bit more cornstarch before rolling it. And we're going to roll it out about 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe a little thinner. And then we're going to cut out a circle. Okay, so now I'm going to cut the circle out. So what I like to do to get a clean cut is I like to press down and give it a little twist. And this is going to help separate the edges of the fondant to the cutter. It also works if you're using a like a weaker cutter, like plastic is usually weaker than like the tin ones. They're not as sharp. So I like doing that to help give a clean cut. And what I mean by a clean cut is that the edges could have some flares coming out of them, but if you do, you can always pick it up and use your finger to press down lightly against it to get rid of those. So now I have my circle, and this excess fondant I'm going to wrap up into the bag with the other black fondant so that it stays soft. When you're using darker colors, you'll notice that you might see your cornstarch on the fondant, but that's okay. You can use your fingers to rub the excess off, or even a dry paintbrush. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to flip this fondant over, and I'm going to brush a small amount of water on the back, and the water is going to act as an adhesive so that the fondant will stick to the cookie. You can also use icing if you want. Sometimes people use edible glue, but water works just fine. So there we go. Actually, okay. So now we want to make sure that now that it's on your cookie, we want to take off about 1/4 of the top of this, because this is going to be the cauldron, and we're going to fill the excess amount of the cookie with the bright green. So I'm going to mark it about 1/4 way down, and I'm going to score across the cookie horizontally. And I'm going to lift that excess up. And we'll get rid of that piece. And right here where this extra is, this is where we're going to fill it in with the bright green. So we're going to repeat this process that we did with the black, but with bright green. So I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to cut off about the same portion, about 1/4 of the fondant. And again, we're going to wrap this up so it stays soft. Okay, so now I'm going to have to knead this fondant to get it nice and soft. And like I said, it actually gets pretty soft quickly for me because I have warmer hands. So I'm just kneading it, and this is going to activate the gums and make it a little bit more pliable. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll out more of this and cut out another circle. And we're going to fill in this gap with green and then begin to make the bright green bubbles. This way, if there's any gaps, you don't see any cookie, you see the bright green underneath it. So now I'm going to roll this out. Again, about 1/8 of an inch thick. If you want to go thicker, you can go thicker. If you want to go thinner, you can also go thinner. Just don't go too thin, because then the fondant might be a little bit hard to work with. Okay. So now again, I'm going to cut another circle, and I'm going to make sure that my cutter is clean from the black fondant. So I'm just rubbing over the edges with my finger. So now I'm going to press down. I'm going to give it a twist so it's a nice clean cut. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the cookie next to it, and I'm going to try to measure off where I have to cut. So again, it's about a quarter down from the circle. And you're just going to carefully cut horizontally across. And you're going to use a little bit of water. I'm going to put the water directly on the cookie. And we're going to adhere this right on top. Again, this bright green right now is just for the background for the cauldron bubbles. So the next step before we begin the bubbles, we're going to work with the black fondant again and make the little lip on the edge of the cauldron, and then the little feet on the cauldron. So we can actually put this bright green fondant to the side in a bag because we're going to go right back to this to make the bubbles. So now I just need some more black. Okay, so to make the little lip on the top of the cauldron, all we're going to do is we're going to form a small ball. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use our pointer finger and our middle finger together, and we're just going to lightly roll back and forth to create a skinny log. And if you end up going a little too long, that's okay, because you can cut off the excess. And you just want to roll with light pressure. If you use too much pressure, it could flatten the fondant. You just want a nice skinny log. Try to make it proportion all the way through. And then if your edges are too long, we can cut that. So what I'm going to do is, mine's definitely longer than my cookie, but that's okay. I'm just going to cut off the excess after that. So I'm going to use a small amount of water and brush a line of water across into that crease where the bright green and the black fondant meet. And I'm going to place it on top. Lightly pat it down and make sure it sticks. And then I'm going to take my knife, and where that excess is, I'm just going to score it off. And now with the extras that you just scored off, or if you don't have extras, that's okay too. We're just going to form very small balls of the black fondant. And once you have a ball, what we're going to do is lightly press down with your pointer finger so that it creates a circle. It's going to be like a thicker circle, and this is going to be the feet of the cauldron. So to do that, now we're going to attach them on each side of the bottom of the cauldron. One on the left and one on the right. So it should look like this right now. And now we can begin adding the bubbles. So the bubbles are easy and fun to make. You just want to roll up a bunch of small circles of bright green fondant, varying in size, some very tiny, some medium size. And we'll just arrange them randomly on top of the cauldron. And then if you had like an edible marker or edible paint, you could write Hocus Pocus on the cauldron. You can write any Halloween messages. Are there any questions right now?
We just got a question from Michaela. Does this have to be done with sugar cookies, or can it be done with any kind of cookie?
You can use whatever kind of cookie you want, especially because the Satin Ice Fondant is vanilla flavored and it's delicious. It really pairs great with any flavor cookie. The only thing that you would want to be a little cautious about, which is okay because you can roll the fondant thicker, but if you're using a chocolate chip cookie, it might be a little bumpy because the chocolate chips are on it. So that's the only thing that you would have to be aware of, but it would taste delicious on any cookie. All right, so I'm just rolling small balls of bright green fondant, varying in size. I'm not really counting how many. If I have leftovers, that's okay. So we just want to fill in all this space and we're going to cascade some down the sides. And at this point, when you're using only a small amount of fondant in between your hands, you might notice that it is getting a little sticky. So you can brush some cornstarch or powdered sugar on your hands to help it from sticking. So I'm going to make some really, really small ones that are almost like specks and some bigger ones. It could also be fun to put little candy eyeballs in the mix. Halloween is probably one of my favorite holidays. I don't know if we've got any other Halloween lovers out here. But these remind me of Hocus Pocus. I just watched that movie the other night. It's my favorite. You guys can comment what your favorite Halloween movies are. I want to know. Like I said, mine's Hocus Pocus, and I also love Halloween Town. Anything horror. I can read some of these because I'm a little further away from the camera, but
Someone also said Nightmare Before Christmas.
oh, okay. Okay, so I think I might have enough balls rolled up now. So now to make it easy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush a very small amount of water on top of this green layer. You don't want to go overboard with the water because that can make the fondant too sticky. It can make the colors bleed a little bit. So I'm going to just brush a small amount on top. And then this is going to make it easy because we could just start layering on the little bubbles. Wherever you can put some big ones down, some of the smaller ones, and we can layer them. And then towards the end, when I start filling this all in, I'll probably roll a little bit more to make smaller ones to give it more texture. And then if you want to overlap any, you can just place a small amount of water on top wherever you want to overlap any. These bubbles are fun because they add a really cute texture. So I'm just going to brush a little bit more water on top of these so I can add smaller ones on top as well. And don't worry about completely filling in the space because that's also why we put the bright green fondant underneath in the background to help cover up any spaces. Okay, so mine's just about filled. So now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to take a very small amount of water, hardly any, just enough to make the surface a little bit adhesive for the fondant to stick. I'm just going to brush a small line right here, and this is going to help the smaller bubbles stick to cascade down the cauldron. And I'll do a little bit on this side too. Feel free to make the bubbles cascade down wherever. And what I'm doing is I'm actually going to create even smaller bubbles. So I'm just taking pieces that I already have rolled out here and just re-rolling them smaller. This part may seem a little bit tedious, but it's worth it in the end because it's a really cute cookie. So I'm just finishing cascading some of these bubbles down. And then I'll come over here and do some on this side. Okay, so I finished adding all of my bubbles. And this is what the finished product will look like. So now I've got 2 little cauldrons. And again, if you had an edible marker or edible paint, you can definitely write like a little Halloween message on here, like trick or treat or hocus pocus. It's really cute. You guys can show me yours as well. And also definitely take pictures after you're done and share them on Facebook or Instagram and tag Satin and Michael's. Okay, so any of the extra bright green fondant that I have, I'm going to put it into the Ziploc bag with the other, and I'm going to make sure it's rolled up really tight. Next, we're going to make the witch cookie. This one's really cute. I love the eyes. So for this one, we're going to use purple, orange, black, white, bright green, and black. I don't know if I said that already, but all right. So first, I'm going to take out the orange because that's the base of my cookie. And since I am layering a lot of fondant on top of each other here, I'm going to make the background layer of the fondant, the purple, a little bit thinner. But if you don't care, you can make it thicker too. It's up to you. No right or wrong. You can always make it a different color background too if you wanted to. Okay, so I'm going to take the same portion that we were using before, about a quarter amount off of this fondant, and I'm going to wrap it back up and put it in a Ziploc bag. So now we're going to need the purple fondant to help get it pliable. Dust your surface with some cornstarch or powdered sugar. Be careful not to use too much. If sometimes I'll shake my cornstarch and a lot will come out, and what I'll do is I'll just scoot some to the side if it's too much. That happens a lot actually. Okay, so mine is starting to get pliable. You'll notice because you'll have more stretch as you need. You'll feel like it's softer and you'll feel that it's going to be easier to move around. Okay, so just like before, I'm going to roll it into a ball. I'm just going to slightly press down just to flatten it just a little bit to get any of the air out. And I'm going to redust my surface with a little bit more cornstarch. And I'm going to roll this out. Normally I would go about 1/8 of an inch thick, but I said I'm going to just roll it out a tiny bit thinner just because we're going to be layering quite a bit on top of the fondant. But that's the good thing about Satin fondant is that it can roll really thin. The workability is awesome. So you actually can save product and the product can go a long way because you can roll it thin. So I'm going to cut out a circle. So I'm going to press down. I'm going to give it a good twist so that I have a clean cut. And I'm going to roll this excess back up and put it back with my purple fondant. Make sure the bag has no air in it. And to clean any of these frayed edges, I'm just going to go around with my finger and press it down just a little bit. Okay, so now I have my cookie and I'm going to brush a small amount of water on the back, just enough so that the fondant will stick to the cookie.
We had a question about how much pressure do you need to use when you're pressing the fondant onto the cookie?
Oh, not a lot at all. You don't want to use too much pressure, because then what you'll do is you'll create fingerprints and indents in the fondant. I'm hardly using any pressure. I'm really just lightly brushing over the top just to adhere it, because the water is going, or the frosting or whatever you're using underneath it is going to help it stick right away. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the head of the witch, which is bright green. So we'll take that out. I have some extra from when we made the cauldron, and it's already kneaded, so it's pretty much ready to go. And I'm just going to take out small enough portion. I am going to wipe my hands though, because I was working with purple, and that's a pigmented color. So I want to make sure that I get any of that excess off my hands so that it doesn't rub off onto the bright green. And then after I do that, I'm going to make sure my hands are very dry. Okay. So for the witch's head, we're going to roll the bright green fondant into a ball. This is pretty much my new favorite technique that I like to use, because there's a lot of different cutters you might have to use for this, but we're actually not going to use any more cutters for this cookie. We're only going to use our hands and a knife. So what I'm going to do with this ball is now I'm going to turn it into a circle just by pressing down my pointer finger lightly and all around the surface area to make it even. And your pointer finger is going to actually smooth out the fondant, so you can just lightly hover over it and smooth it out, and you'll have a nice smooth surface. So I'm just lightly pressing all around to make a nice, even, smooth circle. And this is going to be the witch's face. So I'm going to look at the scale of my cookie to help with the scale of the witch's head. It's not going to take up the full length of the cookie. It's going to take up just like about in the middle. I would say this is about like 1.5 inches, and the cookie is 3 inches. So the head is about 1.5 inches. So I now have a perfect little bright green circle just from pressing down with my pointer finger. And now I'm going to carefully pick it up. Mine feels pretty sticky on the back already, so I'm not going to add any extra water. And what I'm going to do is, actually, I want it a little bit thinner. I'm going to place this right on the bottom edge of the cookie so that the bottom of the bright green lines up with the bottom of the purple fondant. And again, I'm just lightly pressing to adhere this to the fondant. So the next part we're going to work on is the witch's hat. And the first thing I want to do is make the brim of the hat, because this is going to help us decide how long the triangle part of the hat is going to be. So first we're going to work on the brim. So we'll need orange fondant. We haven't worked with that yet, so we'll have to take some out.
We had a question about if you should wash your hands when switching between any new colors.
Yes, it definitely helps. Well, so if you were using, say, purple, which is a dark color, and then you were moving to black, you don't necessarily need to, because the black is just as pigmented and dark and you won't see the purple. But if I was working with the purple and like I just moved to the bright green, you definitely want to wash your hands in between, especially if you have warmer hands and the fondant and the pigment can rub off on that. It's definitely important to wipe your hands before moving to another color. It can also help to wear gloves as well. I like to do that too. It helps it helps your fondant not be as sticky because it kind of acts as a barrier from the warmth of your hands. Okay, so I'm cutting off a small portion of orange fondant. And again,
How
since
long after you open the fondant will it stay usable or good?
so Satin Ice fondant has a 12-month shelf life. And normally our fondant is packaged in, well, not normally, it's also packaged in tubs like this. It's available in 2-pound and 5-pound and a lot larger as well. But inside the pail, there's not one in here right now, but inside the pail, the fondant would be inside of a bag that's wrapped, and you would wrap it really tight and keep it airtight in here, and it would last. Again, I said it has a 12-month shelf life. So as long as you keep this fondant really airtight in a container, and it's going to keep fresh. So it's just important to keep the air out. The air is the fondant's enemy. Because like I said, once you have the fondant out and you're not using it, it's already going to start drying. Okay, so I'm kneading my orange fondant. Now it's nice and soft, and I'm only going to use a portion of this, like a small portion, because I'm just rolling this into a skinny log for the brim of the witch's hat, which is this part right here. So while I'm not using this, so that it doesn't dry out, I'm gonna just place it in my bag, get the air out, make sure it's zip tight. And I probably even have too much here, but I'm going to roll it into a nice ball and then use my pointer finger with light pressure, go back and forth until I'm actually going to use both my pointer and my middle finger. I don't like to use all of my fingers to do this because it might result in like a lumpy log and it might not be uniform. So I just like to use 2 fingers, and I'm just going to roll back and forth with light pressure to make sure that I'm not flattening the fondant. And we're just going to create a skinny log. So I'm going to have to roll mine a little bit longer just because I used a larger piece of fondant than I needed. So I'm going to continue just rolling back and forth, and I'm kind of moving across horizontally just to make sure that it's even along the way. Okay, so I know that mine is really long right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick this up to measure how long I want the brim of the hat to be. And I want it to go to about the edge to edge of the cookie. So that's going to help me measure. I'm going to cut around like right here. Okay, so now I'm just going to flatten this out a bit, not much. I'm going to make sure it's even and smooth. And then now what you can do is brush a very small amount of water. What I do is I take the water out of the brush out of the cup, and I dab it onto a paper towel to get the excess water off. Because I just want it to be wet enough just so that the fondant will stick, but I don't want the colors to bleed. So you can see it actually makes the marks of where you're going to put the fondant. That's all you need. And then I'm going to layer this skinny orange log for the brim of the hat down. Literally, like, I'm going to leave a little bit of room on the top of the head because then the top of the hat is going to go on there. But I still need room for the witch's face and the hair. Okay, so next, we're going to get our orange fondant out again. And to do this, we're going to take a small portion out and we're going to create a cone shape and then flatten that to create a triangle shape. So I'm going to roll this into a ball. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pointer finger again, and I'm only going to roll back and forth on one side of the ball of fondant so that it tapers one end. So I'm just rolling back and forth to create a cone shape. So one end is tapered and pointy. And then I'm going to look at the size of my cookie to help see how long I want the witch's hat to be. So right now I'm in good shape. I have the tip of the witch's hat is just coming off the cookie a little bit. So now that I have the length I need, I'm just going to lightly start pressing down with my pointer finger until I form a triangle. So I'm also giving a little pressure and kind of like swiping the fondant because that's going to move it to make it a little bit wider as well into the shape of the triangle that I want. So I'm kind of pushing it a little bit and pressing down at the same time. You can use your other hand to help mold this into more of a triangle shape as well. And I'm also taking I'm like pinching the edges of the fondant as well. So it turned into a triangle. And now I just want to make sure that this fits on top of my cookie. So I just want to make the bottom of mine a little bit wider. So I'm just kind of pushing, I'm pressing and pushing on the fondant to help mold it into the triangle shape. If you had a star cutter, you could also use a star cutter and then cut off one of the points of the star. But I wanted to do this in a way that no one really had to use any cutters because some people might not have them. So here I have the triangle for the hat. And what I did was I kind of pointed and moved the tip a little bit so that it had some movement. And now I'm just going to adhere this to the cookie just above the brim of the hat. So the next part we're going to do is we're going to make the little ribbon on the hat, which is just a skinny log of black fondant. So that's pretty simple. So we'll take a small amount of black fondant out. Again, I don't need to wash my hands right now in between. First of all, I didn't get that much pigment from using the orange, and I'm going into a dark color. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. So actually right now we're going to take out enough black fondant for the hair as well as the ribbon on the hat. So first for the ribbon, we're going to use the same technique for this all around, but this, we're going to just form a small piece of black fondant into a ball, and then we're going to do the same technique. We're going to roll back and forth with our pointer finger to create a skinny log. And what I did was I tapered the edges a little bit on each side, so the right side and the left side, just to hide it down the sides of the hat so you don't really see it. And you just want to roll it long enough so that it's the length of the witch's hat. So it's going to be shorter than the brim. To attach that, you'll take a very small amount of water. So I'm taking my brush and I'm going to blot it out on this piece of paper towel, and then just lightly brush some water on where the crease of the hat and the brim of the hat match up. And I'm going to layer this little ribbon on top. So now the next part we're going to do is the witch's hair. I have about 4 strands on each side. So what we're going to do for that is the same technique. So first we're going to form a total of 8 small balls of black fondant that are pretty small, probably around the size of a pea. And then once we form them into logs, we can always cut any excess off. So don't worry if they're too long. So I'm just going to form 8 balls of black fondant. And now I'm going to begin to roll these into very skinny logs. And you want these logs to be the length of what we're going to do to attach this hair is it's going to start from the middle of the hat on each side and swing down. So that's how you kind of want to measure the length of the hair. So first you would probably want to go a little bit longer than you think, because then you can cut off the extra. So I'm just rolling out these strands of hair. You can do any color hair you want. I just thought the black hair was appropriate. Red hair would be cool too. Are there any more questions?
No more questions right now.
Okay.
But just a reminder to everyone that this class is being recorded and you'll be able to rewatch it as much as you need in about 24 hours.
Okay, so I'm continuing to roll back and forth. I'm on my 4th strand of hair right now. So that's enough for one side. And what I just did actually is going to be the next step. So what I did was I gathered the 4 strands and I attached them on one end and I pinched them together. So they're all attached just in that corner. I'm going to pick this up so that you guys can see closer. And you want to be careful because this is very delicate because it's skinny, small pieces of fondant. But what I did was I just pinched one end so that they all touch right there. And I'm going to lay this down until I'm ready to attach it to the witch. So I'm going to continue for the other side of the hair. I'm just rolling back and forth until I get skinny logs or skinny strands. If you had an extruder tool, you could definitely use this to create these as well. So if you had a lot of these to do, I would recommend using a tool like that so that you can make these a lot faster. Okay, so I'm on my 8th strand of hair. I'm not worrying about the length right now and if they're all even in length because I can always cut off any excess. So now I have these 4 strands and what I'm going to do is attach the edges together just by gathering it together and pinching. And that's going to attach them together. So now what I'm going to do is take this and I'm going to kind of map out where I'm going to put the hair. And I'm starting in the center of where the hat is for one side. So for this side, I have where that's going to go. So I'm going to brush a small amount of water, very, very, very small because I don't want any colors bleeding, especially because I'm working with black fondant. Just enough so that it will stick. And you can shape it so that it goes on the face a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife and I'm just going to cut off any of the excess because I made it a little too long. You can also do more or less hair, whatever floats your boat. Okay, so now I'm going to do the other side. Again, I'm going to take a very small amount of water, brush it where I want to place the hair so that it attaches nicely. And then I'm just going to cut the excess off with my knife. So now we have our hair. And next we're going to do the facial features, which are the eyes and the nose and the mouth. So now, since I'm going to actually be working with white for the eyes, I want to make sure my hands are nice and clean. So I'm going to wipe them off, make sure there's no pigment on them. And then I'm going to make sure that they're really dry. Okay, so next I'm going to take my white fondant. We haven't used this yet, and we're really only going to need the smallest amount. This is another technique I'm going to show you because we're working with such a small amount. We're going to use the same technique we did for the face where we roll a ball of fondant and then press it into a circle. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 really small balls of white fondant equal in size. If you want to go larger, you can go larger. If you want to go smaller, you can go smaller. I'm going to make them kind of like in the center of the witch's face, one on each side, kind of far apart. It gives it like a really cute look. And then, so now what I did was I attached the balls of the white fondant onto the witch's face. And now I'm going to lightly press down and form it into a circle. And this is going to adhere it to the witch's face without having to pick it up from the mat to bring it over here. Because you are working with such a small amount, that could be really tricky, maneuvering such a small piece of fondant onto the witch's face. So this is already forming into a little small circle. And then I'm going to move over to the next one. So I'm just going to lightly press down evenly all around the ball of fondant to create a little circle. So this is the first layer of the eyes. And next, we're going to layer on a smaller circle of black. So we're going to take, I still have a little bit of black fondant out from before. So we're going to actually take even smaller balls of black fondant that we used than the white. Try to make them even in size. So these are going to be like little specks. And I'll show you up close. So I'm going to use the same technique. I have this small ball of black fondant and I'm going to place it directly in the center of that white circle. And now I'm going to take my pointer finger again. I might use a little bit of cornstarch on my finger just to make sure it doesn't come off. And I'm going to lightly press down and that's going to form a circle again. And it smooths it nice and evenly on top of this white layer. And we're going to do the same to the other side. So I'm going to attach it to, I'm not even using water right now because the warmth of my hands is making the fondant a little sticky. So I just placed it on top. And if you do have to use water, use the most tiniest amount you can because you don't want the colors to bleed because you are working with black fondant and it's against white. So now we're just going to lightly press down again until a circle forms. And now to make the eyes extra cute, we're going to add really small specks of white on the right corner of each eye. So these aren't even going to be little, these are like the tiniest balls of fondant. They're like little specks. Probably can't even see it until it's on the cookie. We're going to do the same thing. You're just going to roll a little ball and you're going to attach it to one corner of the eye. So I did mine on the right corners. I'm sorry, one on the left corner and then the other on the right corner. Okay, I only have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker so that I can get in the other cookie. Okay, so next for the nose, we're going to take a small amount of the bright green fondant and we're going to roll that into a really small ball. And then just like we did with the hat, we're going to taper one end. So it turns into a cone. So we have like a cone shape there, and I'm going to attach this to the witch's face, and we're going to leave enough room so that there's enough room for her smile. So now I'm just going to flatten this just a little bit, not a lot, because I want it to give it like some dimension and texture. So it's like coming off of the face. And then for fun, I'm going to add a little dot of bright green fondant on top for the wart on the witch's nose. And then for the smile, we're taking a really small amount of black fondant and making a really small little log and curling each edge to create kind of like a U shape almost. And then we're going to attach that as well. Again, I'm not even using water right now because my fondant's sticky enough. So those are the witches. Next, we're just going to do the witch hat. So we're using same techniques, and I'll show you how to make this little bow, but we're going to use the same exact technique as before. But first we want to cover our cookie with orange fondant. So I'm going to take a small amount off. We're just going to knead this just until it's soft and pliable. Roll it into a ball, and I'm going to lightly press down a little bit just to get any air bubbles out. And I'm going to dust my surface with some cornstarch. And I'm going to roll this out about 1/8 of an inch thick again. Could be a little thinner too, it's up to you. And this is going to be the base of the cookie. You could do it any color background you want. Okay, so now we're going to use the circle cutter, and there's some residue of the purple fondant on here. So I'm just going to take my dry towel and just rub over it to make sure there's nothing left on this so that it doesn't get onto the orange. So I'm going to press down, going to give it a twist for a nice clean cut. And I'm going to brush a small amount of water on the back of this. And we're going to attach it to the cookie. Light pressure on top to adhere to the cookie. You don't need to press down really hard. Next, we're going to use our black fondant to create the witch's hat. And we're going to use the same exact technique as we did before for the other witch hat. So first, I want to form the brim of the hat. So I'm rolling a ball of fondant, using my pointer finger to roll it out into a skinny log for the brim of the witch hat. And I'm going to go about the length of the bottom half of the cookie for that. And once I have it rolled out into a log, I'm just going to lightly press it down kind of to flatten it a little bit. So it's kind of more like a long, skinny rectangle almost. So what I'm going to do is just paint a very light line of water where I want this, which is where I want the brim of the hat to go, which is on the lower half of the cookie, because we still need to fit the rest of the witch's hat on top. So I'm going to take the rest of my black fondant, roll it into a ball, taper one end to create a triangle or a cone, and then turn it into a triangle. So just like that, and then begin flattening it out with your pointer finger, stretching it a little bit, pushing out the edges, and this will turn it into a triangle. I'm also taking my pointer finger and my thumb on each end, and I'm pinching it, and that's helping form the triangle as well. And then you can come over to your cookie and kind of measure, okay, let's see if you want your triangle to be a little wider. Mine can still be a little longer. So I'm going to make the top a little bit pointier, give it some movement. Press down a little bit more to make it flatter. And here we go. There's like a triangle without using any cutter. Let's see how this looks. Okay, that fits perfectly. So now I'm going to attach the hat to the cookie right above the brim of the hat. And then for the crease, we're going to make a purple ribbon and a purple bow. To do that, again, we're not going to use any cutters for this. We're going to roll a small ball of the purple fondant, use our pointer finger to create a very small strand. That's for the ribbon. That's going to cover the crease where the hat meets the brim. So you want to roll this a length that will allow you to do that so that you don't see the crease of the brim. So re-roll mine. Let's see. Go a little bit longer. Brush a line of water so that this can stick to the fondant. The next part is the bow. So for the bow, we're going to create a square out of the fondant. To do that, again, I'm going to start with a ball of fondant. I'm going to use my pointer finger to press it down into a circle. Not a super thin circle, just because we do have to still cut this and I want to be able to pick it up and move it around. So it's going to look like this after you press it down. And then we're going to turn this into a square by cutting the edges of the circle off into straight edges. So I'm just going to cut a little bit off of the left side, a little bit off of the bottom straight across, a little bit off of the right side, and a little bit up off the top to create straight edges. And so now we have a square. And so now what I'm going to do is cut diagonal to create 2 triangles. So I have 2 triangles now, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the 2 points of the triangle so that the flat sides of the straight edges are on the outside. And this is going to create the shape of the bow. So I'm just going to press those 2 together so it forms a bow shape. And then for the center, I'm going to roll a ball, a really small ball of purple fondant, like that small. I'm going to form it almost into like a oval shape. And I'm just going to attach that to the center. And then it's time to attach this to the hat. So I'm going to just put some water in the center there, and I'm going to carefully pick this up, attach it to the hat. And then for fun, I added little polka dots using bright green fondant. So again, we're going to just take a small amount of bright green fondant. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some water on my paintbrush, but I'm going to dab the rest off so that it's not super wet. And I'm just going to make little specks on the hat wherever I want to place little polka dots. And I'm just doing this in a random pattern. So now I know where I'm going to place my polka dots. And to do that, I'm rolling really small balls of bright green fondant. And I'm going to press them down. Again, use my pointer finger, a little pressure, and it's going to turn it into a little circle, little polka dot. You're just going to do this until you cover the rest of the hat. You just have a couple more to do. You could also do stripes if you wanted. Okay. So I have all my polka dots done. So we have 3 cookies done now. We've got the witch hats, we've got the witches, and then we've got the cauldrons. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't think we have any other questions really.
I might have saw one come through. I can't read it from here, but I think it's asked about selling them.
Oh, yes. Can you give an idea of how much we can sell the cookies?
I would say $5 a piece. Again, it depends on where you live and what the market's like, but cookies that have this much work that go into them, it's really like an art. And I would say you could definitely sell them for $5 a piece.
How long can you keep these after you've made them?
Any normal amount. So it also, the fondant's going to be fine. It's the shelf life of your cookie too, you have to worry about as well. So, I mean, as long as they're airtight, once they're dry, you're not going to want to put this in an airtight container right away. You want it to sit out in the air so that the fondant can get not hard, but kind of set a little bit so that it's not super soft. And then you can put it in an airtight container and probably, I would say 2 to 3 days.
All right. I think that might be the
That's it.
last of the questions we have.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. I had so much fun. I hope you guys had fun too. And I hope you guys make these in the future if you didn't make them today. And yeah, thank you guys so much. And I hope you guys join me for my next classes as well. Have a great day.